Going to ask our candidates to come up, and there's going to be in a seat. I'm going to ask them to do a short bio, and then we'll open it up for questions. So, thank you, Julie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bruce Matari. I'm one of your county commissioners, and I'll just give you a little background about myself. It's kind of interesting. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. Denny wants to go back to Washington, D.C. We came out to Idaho, right? I'm a native of that area. I've lived in this area since 2013, so coming up on 13 years. I've been a county commissioner for just over 3 years. Before that, I'm a business owner. I started my business. I took the first order on the desk that I studied on in high school, and within 4 years, I'd grown the business to have just under 200 staff and full-time equivalent. It was a 24/7 operation. We built our software from scratch. I built my HR manual from scratch. I built all the policies from scratch. I've dealt with regulators, accountants, attorneys, you name it. I've pretty much dealt with it all. And it almost was like the perfect fit for becoming a county commissioner, because the county commissioner job is really a business job. And that job includes policy making in areas of HR, land use, as well as ordinance. And you also focus on money, cash flow, and making sure that taxpayer money is being used efficiently and effectively. And so as your county commissioner for the last 3 years, I've worked hard to address the issues with irresponsible growth. And what I mean by that is anything goes, right? Because one of the things that people don't understand in Idaho is the fact that the growth doesn't pay for itself. That it forces the residents who live here to have to pay for that growth. And as a consequence of that, it ends up creating an environment where it taxes people out of their homes. And so addressing that is one of my number one priority. Along with that, properly funding our public safety, and then of course finally ensuring transparency through accountability. When you get to see what we see, then you have a better understanding of what's happening in your county government. And so with that said, thank you, and I'm sure that we'll continue to talk more.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bela Kovacs. I know many of you, some of you I don't know, but thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. I'm going to talk a little bit today about some things about myself that maybe many of you don't know, and things that I haven't really talked about before. I never really have gone into my background in private sector, but before I ventured into government, I have 20 years of experience in corporate America, Fortune 100 companies. My role was a category manager and a buyer, and I managed the purchases for Fortune 100 company, 2 of them, nationwide. I was operated out of a hub in Denver, Colorado, and that experience has given me the skill sets to be able to know where to look and to follow the money. And so that's one thing I've learned. I know where to look. And so when I ventured into government back in 1999, I became the purchasing director for Spokane County. I performed in that role for about 20 years. And then I decided to exit and move into real estate. Things got a little bit political in Spokane County. In Spokane County, we have, everything's pretty much a union shop. I had a small shop in Spokane County of 7 individuals, and out of 7 individuals, 3 of them were union officers. And in Spokane County, the county commissioners negotiate a collective bargaining agreement that allows each union officer to spend up to 10 hours per month on non-county business on union activities. There were issues, work wasn't getting done, and I went up against the union. And one of those officers was the president of the union. And I had documented everything quite well. And I met with labor relations and said, we need to take some action. And I didn't back down. So I'm known for not backing down. And when I find problems, I go after them. And so working here now as the assessor for Kootenai County, I have found some problems. I knew there were some issues when I came in. I had talked to people long before I became the assessor. I knew people that were in the assessor's office that actually related to me about some problems and some concerns. And so when I became the assessor, I began looking into things, and processes didn't seem to match up, didn't seem to line up. Everybody's heard the story that I've told about how there were no files when I came into the assessor's office. Literally, the office drawers, the desk drawers in the office were empty. I asked staff to go get the files. They said they were in storage. I said, please go get them, retrieve them. They came back and they said they're gone. I said, show me where they were. We went down into the vault storage, and there was nothing there. And they said, well, maybe they're in locked cabinets upstairs. So we went upstairs, we looked in all the locked cabinets, found nothing. So I proceeded then to manage the operations, administer from scratch. And I studied the laws, I read the laws, there's a document called the Assessor's Manual, I studied that, and I began asking questions. And because I know where to look and I know what to look for, I asked very direct questions. And when you got people that have been entrenched in the bureaucracy for years, and there are some people that were there that were 30, 40 years in the office, some of them got the job right when they were out of high school, those questions could be threatening. Because everybody that goes into government, or whenever you join an organization, you have a decision to make. I can go along to get along, or I can ask questions. And when you ask questions, you ultimately lead to the hard question. The hard question is, why do you do it that way? And that's a threatening question, because when you ask that question, the people that are there, that have been there, they know they have to face the next question. The next question is, why didn't you change it? And they become part of, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. That's the issue that I've been fighting. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, a brother-in-law of mine took a look at the county website and began looking at information and data on the assessor's website. And it is information that is publicly available, public access. You can reach out to it. Every single computer system has something called an API. It is multiple doors where computer programs can communicate with one another. He went ahead and looked at that. He looked at the information and performed the analysis. He's a data scientist. As a result of his analysis, he discovered that commercial property values have been frozen for a very long time, going back decades, long before I became the assessor. When I became the assessor in 2020, the property rolls were already established. I had nothing to do with the property rolls in 2020. That was the height of COVID when I came in. The DMV operations were a mess. I focused my entire attention for about 1.5 years on DMV and working on fixing and resolving issues. Essentially, as a result of that, I had nothing to do with the 2021 property rolls because I was really not involved in those. As the assessor, we know that all the appraisers, when they come in, you don't really achieve competency in the field of appraisal and assessment for a full 5 years. We have something called a 5-year plan, and we don't get to visit every parcel except once every 5 years. And so it's not until you have achieved 5 years that you have the full level of competency to see everything in the assessor's office. At that time, in 2022, if you can imagine the most prominent commercial properties in Kootenai County, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they are very influential and they own the press, and those property values were frozen. And you can go into our website, and I challenge all of you to do this right now. You can go into our website right now, go do a parcel search, look up that property, and you'll see the values were frozen. And including the time frame when I've been here, they've been frozen a little bit. That's something we're looking at and we're working on. Last year, when we made a budget presentation to the commissioners, Dyson Savage, my chief deputy, he did a very good presentation providing metrics and data and information to all the commissioners requesting. In fact, I think Ron was one of the individuals that was at the meeting, and he complimented Dyson on the presentation that he had made, providing all the metrics. One of the metrics we presented led to our recommendation that we hire another commercial appraiser, somebody that's very qualified to take a look at this problem. Went through the budget process, and then on the very last day after the budget was advertised, the commercial appraiser was pulled from the budget because I know that the budget had to be balanced. And so it's an issue that we need to address. When values are not going up proportionately, and I would propose it to you this way, the law says that every value has to rise proportionally according to market. If the land is going up on residential property, how could it not go up on commercial property? If the value of the building materials are going up on residential properties, how could it not go up on commercial property? Concrete is concrete, right? And so there are three methodologies for appraisal: sales approach, income approach, and cost approach. For sales, how often do you have a large, the one commercial property we're talking about, how often do those properties sell? Not that often, right? So if you don't have the sales data, you got to look to the other data. Are those companies going to give us their profit and loss of their financials? Chances are they're not going to give us that, so we don't have that data. So the last piece of data that we got to look at is cost, and that comes down to hiring, either having our appraisers do our value assessment, but if we want a third-party opinion, we can hire an outside MAI appraiser. Or one thing we haven't done, which is something I'm looking into, I'm going to reach out. I know several contractors that manage large big box operations of construction. Have them come in, have them do a material takeoff on the cost of what it costs to build such a project, and with that we're going to get value and information, and then we're going to take a look at raising the values of commercial properties. And with that, I will yield back to the floor.
Thank you, Vale.
Hi guys, so my name's Julie Hensley. I am going for Kootenai County Commissioner in District 1. That being said, you are only able to apply for that district, but everybody in the county, when you're county commissioner, you serve the entire community. And that I do love, because then we get to actually go out to everywhere in our community and be able to talk and see what their concerns are. I'm doing this, I really want to make sure that Kootenai County, that we preserve our quality of life. We're in an area right now where we're growing at a rapid rate. And part of that is actually diving in and seeing how we can keep our quality of life here. Other places have been doing it where we can actually see what growth has done. We need to make sure infrastructure and that is put in place. We need to make sure that our comprehensive plan actually makes it to make sure that Kootenai County is sustainable and that current residents aren't like bearing the cost of the new development that's coming in. And our current comprehensive plan doesn't quite do that. And so it's something that really needs to be evaluated to go forward in our community to make sure that we're preserving that quality of life that we have here. So a bit about my background. I am a nurse. I have spent my life advocating for people. I've been in healthcare for 20 years now. I worked in an emergency department for 10 years. It really teaches you how to be able to think under pressure, to be able to plan. I was the charge nurse in the second busiest ER in the state of California for a couple of years. And part of that is you really do have to be able to organize everything. You have calls coming in and everybody sitting there needs a bed, and it's prioritizing. And that's something I've had to do during my career, is to be able to prioritize and to be able to have life-saving interventions. And because you really are affecting somebody's lives, and as county commissioner, you're affecting everybody's in your community's lives. I'm also a small business owner. I've had to go through county regulations. I've been through the building permits. I've had to deal with all of that. And I know that it can be really burdensome on small businesses, and having local businesses is what helps our community out. Those small businesses make us thrive. People in plumbing, electricians, those are what everyday people need. When we have problems, we need to be able to reach out to those small business owners. And if we're impeding at the county level, even at the city levels, we need to be able to look at that. Talk to the small businesses, see how we can affect them, see how we could be more productive. Having, when you pull permits, having the efficiency in that and being able to speak with everybody to know what those needs are, I know is very important, because as a small business owner, I've been affected by those things. So that is why I'm running for county commissioners, to kind of be able to help. I've been in a variety of roles in my life with owning businesses and being a nurse, so I will gladly answer questions.
Hi there, my name is Carlos Zamora. I'm running for county treasurer. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I think a fair amount of you know my background. I'm retiring tomorrow. I'm basically calling my boss in Abu Dhabi, said that, give me my 2 weeks and I'm done. And I'm focusing on this, which is my new chapter in my career. People approached me and they said, I'd be a good fit for county treasurer. And to be honest, I think I am, considering what Julie has mentioned, Bella, and obviously Bruce has mentioned. I'm worried about the excessive amount of growth that's gone on in the county. Obviously, Bruce and Julie had mentioned, that's going to cost money, and it is costing money. Budgets are going to be stretched. I mean, I think we can see it now, and I think I mentioned it before, state and local municipalities are going to be under somewhat of a cash drain this year and possibly next year. Tax revenues at the state level, basically sales taxes, are going to be down. So where do I come in? I make money. I've been in the financial industry for, God knows, way too long. It's been a lot of fun. It's offered me a great career. And for the last 10 years, I'm the head of asset liability management for a Middle Eastern bank based in, of all places, Washington, D.C. In those 10 years, I took basically a small operation that only made $4 million to $50 million as of last year. It's just myself and another guy. It's just two guys. And to be honest, like Julie said, working in the emergency room, I think you need to know the flexibility. And my job, obviously, is not life-threatening like it is in the emergency room, but you need to be flexible and think on your feet. I handle a multi-billion-dollar balance sheet. I have a fair amount of responsibilities on a day-to-day basis to make sure that not only the branch that I represent is fully funded, but I also take care of other programs to make sure that my head office, which is based in Abu Dhabi, is funded as well. I run several liability programs for the parent company, and I make sure that, that we get the best price available. So when it comes to investing, well, I also run a $2 billion investment portfolio, which is basically made up of treasuries and other, high-grade corporate bonds and so forth, mostly treasuries. My function is to get every ounce of return that I can on that investment portfolio. And for the past few years, I've been able to do that. So people ask me, well, somebody asked me, said, well, you're like, Mario Andretti, trying to drive an Uber. Well, yeah, okay, maybe that's because, the decimal numbers do change, but my main objective is to make money for you guys, to basically make sure that our county is funded at the best possible price. One of the many responsibilities, which my competitor mentioned earlier, is investing short-term cash. I'm good at that. I mean, that's what I do every day. I borrow short and I lend long. I try to capture as much of basis points as I can to get a return for my institution. And that's what I'm going to do here. If I can make any amount of money to fund all the infrastructure and all the costs of the county, it's less burden on all of you, on us. We love this place. My wife and I came here 6 years ago. Actually, long story, I'm sure some of you have heard it, we honeymooned here in 1991. We went whitewater rafting down the Salmon River, which was one of the best experiences of my life. And we fell in love with the state. COVID gave us the opportunity to come down and visit here. Fell in love, we bought a house, and here we are. Met an enormous amount of friends, really good friends. We love it here. I want to keep it the same way it is. I think we all do. I think I look at all of you, we all want to keep it here. But it comes at a cost. And if I can alleviate some of that burden to my two commissioners, I'm going to do that. That's it.
Okay, so now we can open it up for questions. Yes, Ron?
I got one for Bailiff. You brought up a really interesting topic as far as commercial real estate. Who and how were the commercial property values frozen? And how do you unfreeze it?
So the analysis that was done by a relative of mine, who's a data scientist. He used the term frozen. What he means by that is the values, and you can verify this. You can go look at the county's website, look at the parcels, and you'll see if you go back some 20 years, possibly, there are stints of, say, 2, 3, or sometimes 4 years. Some of those it's hard to tell because they're like corrections within the same year. But where the values Didn't change. They were the same value. Let me go back to what your question was. Your question is, how do you unfreeze it? Is that your
Yeah.
question? What really, and I alluded to when I spoke a moment ago, what you really need to do is the state law says that all the properties have to be valued at market value. What is market value? It's what the going rate would be. And it's one of the three methodologies, or one of the three approaches for appraisal, right? Cost, income, and comparable sales. But you can only make the change if you've got the data, right? Just because you don't have the data, and I think that's the history. The history was there's a reluctancy on the part of the prior regime to make a change in value if they couldn't support the reason for the increase in the value. Because what happens? People file an appeal. It goes to the appeal. And then whenever there's appeal, it comes down to an individual appraisal. So our staff has to go out and they have to come up with comparable sales, because that's what everybody relates to. And if they don't have that data, then they realize they're probably going to lose it in the appeal. And so there's been a hesitancy to raise the values, or they've just not raised the values if they can't defend the increase. That's not in compliance with state law, because state law says it has to move. And so I would argue, and I'm arguing, that go find the data. And there are other methodologies. There's regression analysis, which is a statistical way. You're basically running polynomials, and you're using the other variables in the equation to then determine what the value is based upon the components of the structure, the land plus the improvements, and then of course improvements can be broken up into many variables, right? And so there's just other ways of getting at the data, which historically Kootenai County has not done. I've been in conversation with the State Tax Commission, Alan Dornfest. I've been talking to him about regression analysis and using it. If you break open the textbook on appraisal and assessment methodology, it talks a lot about regression analysis.
I know what regression
And
is.
I asked Alan Dornfest, I said, where are the cost models? I want to look at the cost models. I want to look at those models. And he says, we don't really have them here in Idaho. He says, Bela, I have pushed all the assessors throughout the state to try and do regression, and I can't get the other assessors to do it. He says, but Bela, Kootenai County is ideal for regression. Kootenai County is perhaps the poster child because of the diversity that we have. And so I've been in conversation, and it's something I'm looking at doing. I think we need to do it.
When's the last time the resort had a change in value?
Well,
Resort hotel.
It changed in 2022, which was the first year that I was involved in the assessments, which was a big year. Lots of appeals that year, 791 appeals. It changed in that year, and again, the year for that property is always in year 5 of the 5-year plan. This year, right now, we're in the 5-year plan, and I told my staff, I said, I want to make sure that we're seeing movement by market, justifiably, on all the values.
If I can I just add a point to this? Because I've talked to assessors all throughout the state on all my trips, and multiple assessors have talked to me about this issue. And it is an issue that we're facing across the state because we've had significant development all over the state, large agricultural chip manufacturing data centers, large farms, like that are not getting the same treatment as everybody else. So I don't know that we want to spend too much more time on it, but it is an issue that's being faced all around the state. It's not just here.
One quick comment on that. When it comes to insurance, we all insure our houses, and each year when you get your insurance bill from they raise the value of your property, or they've assessed it. Is there any way you can see what the insurance value of the resort is?
That probably would be information that the resort probably would not release, right? I will tell you that I went down, my staff contacted the city and asked for, this is strange, if you look in our record, you see the sketch for for the resort property, it's just a square. Now, I believe that if you were to sketch the drawings and the floor plans, it would be a lot different than just a simple square. That's it, one square, one level. It's 17 stories, but there's only one square. So my staff called the city to get to the plans and the drawings, and they said that they were lost.
Well, they're building onto that, and there's a cost per square foot of the resort for the new construction. Couldn't that cost per square foot be applied to the existing hotel?
Well, so that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the cost approach and exploring it in more depth, yes.
Terry's got a question.
This is for Julie and for Bruce. what are your thoughts on moving the fair?
Let me go first.
Yeah, you can go first.
Oh,
I mean, I have my answer for that. I mean, I'll tell you right now, it was myself and Commissioner Brooks that led the charge to get a 20-year lease at the fairgrounds to keep the fair there, because nobody wants to move the fair. And the only way that a future board could technically get out of such an arrangement is if they pushed it to an advisory vote where the community actually said we want to move the fairgrounds. But if an advisory vote from the community says we want to move the fairgrounds, then people are saying I want to. And this is a way to preserve the fairgrounds at that location where they are right now. And the other reason is because there are people who want to make significant donations to our fair to help either maintain the buildings or eventually build a like a civic center. But they won't do that if they feel like the fair is going to move. And so that's why we put together the 20-year document for them.
Actually, a lot of that is when it was going on 2 years ago, it was a big thing of wanting to move the fair. But what a lot of people didn't realize is that it sounds great, yeah, let's put it in the middle. But if we got rid of our fairgrounds, in reality, we would never gain a fairgrounds back. And that's a huge thing. My kids are in 4-H. It's actually something I've advocated for in our city because of how we're building right now. It's like a lot of those 4-H animals we can't really accommodate in the housing that's being created right now, because HOAs are like, you can't have chickens, you can't have bunnies, you can't have anything. And meanwhile, we have kids that go, well, why don't you buy your beef from the store? Because they don't realize beef is from a cow. And so it is very important to keep things like the fair around. It creates an area of community. It's an amazing thing that we have and are blessed to have in our community, and if we get rid of it, it won't come back. So I'm for not moving the fairgrounds.
So, Bruce, do you know what, now Commissioner Duncan is in office for quite a while longer. Does she support moving it or keeping it where it's at?
Well,
Do you know?
You know, that's a good question because no one ever seems to get a straight answer on that one.
That's why I keep asking.
Yeah, there was
Seriously.
a meeting that we had where she said there was somebody anonymous who wanted to do something with land up north, but she said, and this was when she was running for office last time, and she said that we wouldn't know anything until that June, which was after the election. And I never heard another word about that since. So, and I believe it was the following fall after the election that we had that memorandum put in place with the fair to keep it there for 20 years.
So it's done. 20-year thing is done. We're good. for
That
the
was
next-
done
Yeah.
like a year and 2 years, year and a half ago. Yeah.
Didn't only 2 of the 3 commissioners vote for that?
It was Commissioner Brooks and myself that voted for it.
Yeah,
I believe you
right.
might have even been there at
I
that
was.
meeting.
That's why I mentioned it. You know. I think I'm the one that brought it to a vote.
Bill?
So for Bruce, if someone were to suggest that there's some non-disclosure agreement between you and the sheriff, or also suggest that there's some deputizing in case of conflict of interest, what would you say on that?
Okay, so the question is, do I have a confidentiality agreement at the sheriff's office, and is there a conflict of interest as a designated special deputy by our sheriff? First of all, I never signed a confidentiality agreement, and anybody could simply put in a public records request, one, to ask for the document, and to even see if a document like that exists. So there's no such thing. It's all hearsay. You know, when you hear things that can't be verified, it's election season. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, the second thing is this conflict of interest. That's impossible. Because if you're an employee of the county, you're a volunteer for the county, or you are an elected official for the county, your fiduciary is to the citizens of Kootenai County. It is not to an elected official. That is your fiduciary. Okay, so as your county commissioner, my fiduciary is to the citizens of Kootenai County. The special deputy status still says my fiduciary is to the citizens of the county. Because if I'm doing something that is wrong, that doesn't serve the citizens of the county, then that is the conflict. Is when I don't do what's right for the citizens of the county. So it's all election era type stuff, that seasoned stuff that people say. And they're just trying to plant the seeds of doubt. I call them FUD packers. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's what it is. It's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They want to create fear that there's something wrong, uncertainty that there's something wrong, or doubt that there's something wrong. Nobody ever comes up and asks that question, but you hear a lot of people talk about it. So, Bill, I really appreciate you asking that question and giving me a shot at answering it for folks.
What is this special deputy?
Exactly.
Exactly. We all want
It does not give you any additional powers than what I have not being a special deputy. As same as you, there is zero additional powers, except that you get a credential. You get credentials. Okay, you do not have arrest powers. You do not get to carry a gun into different places that you can't already with an enhanced concealed carry permit or regular. Actually, it's permitless in the state right now. There's no additional powers that you get.
So what's the point of it then?
Because it's just a way of making you a part of the sheriff's office, I guess you could say, but there's no additional benefits outside of that. Initially, it was given to me after the sheriff was elected. I was his campaign manager, I was an advisor, and so it was a way to allow me to kind of participate in community communication and things like that, and work with the sheriff. But it doesn't provide any additional powers.
Bruce, I have a question for you. Any update for those who aren't paying attention to the Hayden law enforcement services on your end?
Well, to begin with, this is the first year in the county's history that I'm aware of where we're actually recovering the full cost of a deputy. The county has been subsidizing that service for the city of Hayden to the tune of several $100,000 sometimes a year. The most recent contract that was brought before the county, we would have lost $700,000. The county was not even including overhead in the cost of the deputy, meaning the cost of the amortizing, the cost of the car, the bullets, the training, the equipment. None of that was included in the cost. This is the first year we actually have that incorporated in there. It's one of my big issues as your county commissioner is not allowing county citizens to subsidize other taxing jurisdictions. And so this was the first step. As far as that's done for FY26, so we're going to give Hayden the numbers for FY27 because everything just keeps going up cost-wise, and then we'll go from there.
Got a question for Julie. Julie, you're taking Mark's place, Mark Everline's place.
Yes.
Has he? I heard he's endorsed you now.
Yes, he has endorsed me
Okay,
now.
so not your competitor.
Not my competitor.
Oh,
Hey, Julie, I have a question for you. The board is made up of Bruce, who is an assertive male personality. Okay.
sort of.
Well, not assertive, a strong male personality. Then there's Leslie.
I
Who's
like strong personalities better.
Okay.
I don't think the gender has anything to do with it. But go ahead, sorry.
All right. And then Leslie is a strong female personality, and she's got a lot of background with the county. And of course, we know as citizens there's a little friction between the two sometimes. All right. And you're coming on the board, so how are you going to work with those two personalities? And I don't mean to disrespect you, Bruce. Okay. But how are you going to work with these two kind of dynamo personalities as a third party?
Yes, I was just about to say, I told you before, so I'm a third party person coming in, which I think is great. When businesses have stuff going on, they hire that third party person to come in and analyze everything that's going on because they have a different perspective. I also have a strong personality. Being in nursing, I'm working in the ER, you gain quite a bit of a strong personality and you got to be able to hold down and be able to speak up when stuff is going on. You have to be a voice. I currently work in the OR, and my biggest thing is being an advocate for that patient. 99% of my patients are asleep during procedures, and I'm their voice, and I'm not afraid to stand up and be like, hey, we need to stop. And that's kind of what I've done throughout my entire career. You can ask anybody that I work with. They know I'll speak my mind, and that's kind of how I would do it with there. But people have asked, like, well, what if somebody doesn't agree with you? And my thing is, if they aren't able to see my side of it, I haven't presented my argument well enough. And so that's the same thing with them. It's, well, tell me why you feel this way, because that's part of having a conversation. You have to be able to have a conversation with people and see their perspective, and also be able to voice your perspective if you have a different opinion. And if at the end you don't agree, sometimes you don't, but you also may have not presented your case well enough, and you need to be able to go back and be able to present a better case to support your argument.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could I just?
Defend yourself.
No, what Julie is saying is correct, and I've said this to Commissioner Eberline before. My job is to convince either him or Commissioner Duncan to see my way. Okay, and that job should be done in front of a camera so you, the public, can see exactly what's going on. Now, we don't have to agree on everything, and that's okay. But what we do have to agree on is that we have access to the same information, right? So that one of us isn't undermining the board and knows something that the rest of us doesn't know, to steer the board into a decision that they otherwise would not make. And that is the key difference, I think, is that we can agree to disagree, but we should all agree that we're looking at the same information and working together to make sure that we're all looking at that.
Agree. Bill?
I just want to say really quickly in response to your comment about strong personalities. If you've ever worked in crisis healthcare, you'll know that there are many factors happening all at once, and somebody's got to decide what to do. And there's a team, and they need to agree on what to decide what to do. And so I think Julie would have the perfect background for that kind of environment, where there's so many things at once, and you've got to find out the solution that's going to be the best for all, and that's crisis management. And that you do all the time in the ER. And you got to do it as a team, not just on your own.
Sure. Terry?
Okay, this one's for Julie. What experience or expertise do you have in financial management, and how will you apply it to overseeing public funds?
All right. So financial management, I worked as a nurse. My husband was in law enforcement, and we lived well below our means. We commuted a long way into town just to be able to make sure that we could save our money, because we knew we didn't want to buy liabilities. We wanted to buy assets. It was like, you don't go out to eat for dinner. We made our own meals, and spent our life very financially conservative, which I feel like is a very important thing as a county commissioner, is making sure that in your own life you've been fiscally responsible. After doing that, we started a business. We bought our first commercial property back in 2018, and it's really taught me how to deal with finances. I've done all our budgeting books for his business. I'm the one that oversees it. I've done all our Excel spreadsheets for both our businesses and our commercial properties. I formulated all of that. We're consistently buying more properties, and part of that is knowing how to budget money and seeing we don't just focus on today, we focus down the road, and it's very important. As a county commissioner, it's not, this is my decisions today, it's what this decision does today affects us down the road. If we're sitting there buying cheap products today, are we going to end up spending so much money down the road because we didn't look ahead? Right now, the dispatch department is asking for a new building. They're asking for a $9 million building. And part of that, like as a commissioner, is looking, okay, well, what options do we have? We need to be presented with multiple options, and dealing with that in our past is the way to be able to ask those questions and know to ask those questions. Okay, you have this many employees. Historically, how many employees do we have? How many 911 calls are we fielding? And we're projected to have this many people in our community in the future. This building that you want, will it actually be able to sustain us in the future, or will it be built out and now you're going, hey, I need another building and it's going to cost us even more money down the future. So it's being able to really ask the right questions, and part of that is having that financial background.
Thank you.
Yes, Wes?
I talked to Bruce a little bit before the meeting, but Julie, I'd like to have you both. A couple years ago, our legislatures passed the Egg Protection Act, and so every county in the state of Idaho, their commissioners were to select a commission to advise them on protecting our egg lands in that specific county. And we've been meeting, you selected 5 of us, and we've been meeting for the last year and a half or so. So my question is, what's your perspective on this, and is this really necessary? Do you have a vision for the future? Sometimes I feel like we're going nowhere, or is this really a dead end?
Would you like me to start with that?
Sure, that'd
Just
be great,
because,
since you've already,
this is classic government, right? Boise, their legislation is for the entire state, right? So it becomes one size fits all. And being on the legislative committee of the Idaho Association of Counties, I can tell you we are constantly battling some of the ideas that come out of the legislature. Some of these legislators have some very interesting ideas that may work in a very small county, might work in a very agricultural county, but will not work here. And sadly, it was statutorily required to have this board. And in Kootenai County, probably like Ada County, you're not going to have very many applications come up to protect agricultural land. I would like to see that happen, but I don't see it really happening in the long run, because as you see, especially on the prairie, the #1 crop up there is tract housing. And I don't think they're going to care about protecting that land for any other kind of agricultural use. So from that perspective, it's really a one-size-fits-all legislative solution to something that is a bigger issue down south.
Catherine?
Yeah, I have a question for Carlos. You had talked about managing the money for the treasury
Right.
and investing the funds.
Short-term cash.
And short-term gains, or short-term funds. Do you know, I don't know if you know or not, are you restricted, is the county, are they restricted to only invest in certain types of vehicles, or are you able to just sort of?
There's statutes limiting the amount of products you can invest.
And
in.
the risk factor on.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I would be concerned about having, access to funds to be able to, trade or do whatever you wanted to whenever, even though you have a good track record, but you would probably be better than not having anybody invest those funds, correct?
I mean, you actually have to explore every avenue access that you have. I go back to my current position. I have very limited products that I'm approved of. They call it an approved product list.
Okay.
And the approved product list is limited because obviously, I've worked luckily for a very conservative institution, and liquidity and safety is paramount. So I'm limited, by the amount of products that I can invest in. So that obviously for an investment manager or any person in my position, it kind of cuts the avenues in terms of revenue generation. But on the other hand, you have to be creative. You have to look at, you have your approved product list. You have to look at each product, and within that product, what's the duration? How much can I extend? What are the parameters in terms of how much can I invest in that product? So my job as an investment manager, I go to every product, I see the parameters I'm guided by, and I try to maximize it. I mean, the beauty, to be honest, I have a lot of fun in what I do. Just because, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I mean, I get to play with somebody else's money. But that's not good. My role is safety, #1, and return. I do have a budget. Every year that budget keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so there's, along with that budget increase, there comes the challenges. Where can I find that extra revenue so I can make my budget? And it's just like a moving target. But it's a challenge. It's something that I enjoy. I've been able to succeed at it. And can I translate to the treasurer's office at Kootenai County? I believe I can. I'm bringing, private sector, private industry knowledge to a government job. I believe Steve and his staff have done a great job. And again, paramount is safety. Short-term cash, so everybody, we can meet all the obligations the county has.
And
Go ahead.
okay, does Steve currently do that now? Do they currently do that in the treasurer's office?
Yes, they do.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, they do. And they've done a nice job. They've done a very good job.
Anybody else?
I
Bill?
do have
Oh,
one question.
Jeanette.
I've lived in Kootenai County for over 35 years, and way back in the day when I was contesting a piece of property on a lake that I owned, the appeals time was about 6 to 7 weeks long. And I noticed over the years that the appeal process time had gotten so severely shortened, it was like 2.5 to 3 weeks. And that indicated to me that the county was not the least bit interested in hearing from the constituents if they had an issue about what was going on with their property assessments. Because it does take time to research whether or not your property is up to snuff with somebody else's. And what I found when I was researching my property that I contested is that it was very unfairly evaluated. What is the length of time for the appeals process now, and is it going to be lengthened to give the property owners a little more time to appeal?
Okay, thank you for the question. Did everybody hear the question?
Yes.
Okay. So there's two answers to that. The first answer is the time frame is governed by state law, and it's the state legislature that establishes the time frame. And essentially, we have to issue our assessment notices to the property owners by or before the first Monday of June of every year.
So does the state change that?
This-
Because
the-
it used to be like May 2nd or 3rd. when
The
we
state
got-
legislature would, yeah, it's the legislators that would change that. And so, and then once the assessment notices have been issued, then property owners, they can look at them, and generally speaking, even starting on that first day, that first Monday of June, people can come in and talk to us and ask questions, and we certainly want to get it right, because sometimes there's information that we don't know, right? And so, but they have up until the fourth Monday of June, which is when it closes, they have to submit their appeal by that deadline, right? Now, when I got there as the assessor, the staff was pretty much firm on that's the only window of time that we want to take questions from the public. I have changed that. What I've changed, and let me qualify this by what I'm saying. I believe that any property owner should be able to come in at any time and talk to us about their property. What is different is they only have the opportunity to change the value for the property roll within that window, within that 4-week window, well, roughly 4 weeks of time to file an appeal. If they don't do it by that deadline, then it's pretty much in the roll, it's certified in the roll, and that's the value for that year, right? But if let's say they missed the deadline, we certainly want them to come in, because that does happen. We want them to come in. I say that they should be limited to just that 4-week window to come in and talk to us. They should come into us anytime. We'll make notes. We got files. We got records. We can retain that record, and then come next year when we assess that value, we need to make sure that we pull out those notes and we adjust the value, if in fact we need to adjust it. So there's two answers to that question. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I guess as I'm looking back on it, when I took my appeal, it was before the county commissioner, so maybe it was a county commissioner issue. But it appears as if the state has made that rule. Because
Yeah.
I remember we had like a 6-week appeals process to go before the commissioners, and now it seems like it's very short.
Well, it's possibly before my time. That could have changed.
Oh,
I
it was
don't
way
know.
before your time.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
sure.
but even though you come before the Board of County Commissioners, that law is governed by the state legislature.
Okay.
So they control that.
So it's their fault.
Terry?
Okay, this is for Carlos. If the county faced a sudden revenue shortfall, how would you respond in your role as treasurer?
I think that, in any liquidity, when I mention liquidity, is, you know, just a term for cash. Obviously, you have to look at your investment portfolio, and then you basically have to make a decision of how to liquidate, how much you need to liquidate. Obviously, you want to keep your most attractive investments as long as possible so they still generate revenue. But at any time that there's a need for cash, you need to look at your investment portfolio and liquidate what you think is best or least attractive to meet those liquidity needs. Is that it?
Okay.
I mean, I've had, just to give you an example, during COVID, I run a liability program for my head office as well as for myself. And, you know, when you get COVID, you know, there was almost like a mini panic in the cash markets in terms of the general markets. I was asked to liquidate. Customers came to us, and they were holding obligations of my institution, and obviously not only my parent institution, myself. And we needed to take those liabilities back, which means I had a run in cash because I had to pay these customers off. And then I had an investment portfolio. And to meet that need, to meet our needs, I had to liquidate my investment portfolio. So you look at your investment portfolio and you look at you want to keep what's attractive, and you liquidate what's going to get you the maximum amount of dollars to meet those needs at that date.
Bill?
Given the shortfall in finances in the state, it, you know, like new construction or urban renewal closures, how could you not have to raise taxes in the future when there's all those people moving in, more pressure on services, more schools, more fire, more police? So can you see a way in which you can avoid having to raise taxes?
Cool. I'll leave it to
Well, yeah, the treasurer doesn't affect the tax
Yeah.
base like that.
No.
That's the problem, is that growth does not pay for itself. So how can you make growth pay for itself? Well, I'll give you an example, impact fees. Idaho legislature has allowed counties and cities to impose impact fees. We have been trying, since I've been a county commissioner, 3 years now, to impose a jail impact fee. We cannot, because 4 people in the city of Athol, council members, voted to not collect the jail impact fee. Now, the jail is a state mandated service, and they said no, which effectively nullified the entire county jail impact fee. So I worked with Joe Alfieri to try to amend the statute so that cities shall collect for jails and courthouses. And we got it through the House, but it sat in a drawer in the Senate and didn't come out into committee. So that's one way. Another way is through the comprehensive.
Excuse me, before you go on. So if one city says no, you can't get it?
You can't, because it creates what's called disparate impact. So then let's say you live in that city and you don't have to pay the impact fee, but Jason here lives in another part of the county and he has to pay the impact fee.
Right.
Why does he have to pay and you don't? And so it creates an imbalance, and then what happens is you can take that to court, and oftentimes in Jason's situation he would win because we're not charging you, because the city doesn't want to capture that fee. Now, another way to address the tax issue is with the comprehensive plan. Just about every place I go, I ask people, and I will ask you here, who wants to see Kootenai County grow faster? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Come on, there's always one person in the room.
Okay, I'll raise it.
All right.
You've been
Okay.
marked.
Well, the way that you address that is with the comprehensive plan. And you establish service levels with the various county services, and then you write ordinance so that the developers actually pay for impact studies. There are no impact studies that go on anywhere in the county, in the cities, nowhere. No one is writing a comp plan like this. And so what happens is that you get the impact studies and they determine if it throws the service levels out of whack. And if it throws the service levels out of whack, you have a numerical justification to either say no to the development or have written into the ordinance, instead of 100 units, you'll approve 25. Right? Now that's legally defensible. I could say all day long we can't handle more growth, but if that is the supporting rationale for why saying no to more development, it will lose in court because it's arbitrary. So that is the other way that we can manage the taxes. Otherwise, by default, taxes will have to go the full 3% year in, year out until we
Will
keep
that be
pace.
enough even?
No, because you have infrastructure. See, the problem with infrastructure, like Julie said, is we're looking at $8.5 to $9 million for a building. That's just an estimate. We have no idea because we haven't really put pen to paper yet. The original courthouse started off at 22 million, and we settled in at 35 million. Okay, for an actual cost. And so that is the problem, is that we don't put the money away for this additional infrastructure. And so the only option left is debt.
So you can't have debt, can you?
If you vote for it, yes.
Oh, a bond.
A bond, or they have a lease buyback program, which you can do, which I think can bypass a lot of the voting requirements, but it's still considered debt.
The county has no debt. Outstanding.
Yes.
I mean, that's a double-edged sword. So it's either, like Bruce mentioned, you have uncontrolled infrastructure costs, you have excessive growth. Let's look at examples. Let's look at the state of Washington, the great state of Washington next door, or California, or a blue state that I came from, Connecticut. It's not just infrastructure costs, it's all the other costs too. And how does governments are very, Danny LeVay mentioned, look at the deficit we have. Politicians only know one way how to fund government.
Spend more.
Tax. Cutting for them is a double-edged sword. And it goes all the way across all the governments, whether it's state or local. I mean, you have to make, luckily I think we have some very good people here who have committed themselves to making some really hard decisions. And they're gonna have to make some very hard decisions. The last thing we want is taxes, increased taxes. We all know what that leads to. How can the state of Washington increase their state budget by 11%? Well, how are they gonna get that source of revenue? Carbon tax. Bingo. Oh, what a brilliant idea. You're already number 4 in the US in terms of carbon tax, and now you're number 1. You're ahead of California. The other brilliant idea, there's no state income tax in Washington, right? It's been voted down 12 times. So what do? Well, let's tax the millionaires. What a brilliant idea. So if you're a dual income house and you're making $500 each, spouse, husband and wife, guess what? You just got a 9.9% increase on your tax bill.
And it wasn't voted on.
Hmm?
I said, and it wasn't voted on.
And it wasn't voted on. It's being challenged now. It's being challenged. But the geniuses in Olympia said, so what do you think that's going to happen? You know what the number 1 state was in 2025 in terms of immigration? Was South Carolina, percentage-wise. Guess who number 2 was?
You mean immigrants from other...
Immigrations from other states.
Migration.
Migration from other states.
Migration.
Oh,
That's
migration.
another word.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, all my head spinning.
It's a never-ending issue, and that's why we're trying to. That's why we're here. That's why we're trying to make. We're trying to make hard decisions. So at the long run, it saves everybody your hard-earned tax dollars.
And
because they're hard earned.
I encourage everybody, because right now the county's doing their comprehensive plan, to go to those workshops. Like City of Post Falls started a while ago, I started going to those because not many people show up, and so it's the opinion of a few that gets passed on. And when you don't realize holes that are in it, like I've tried to address many times the City of Post Falls, because they have a lot of holes in their comprehensive plan that allows for high density building. It's like, all right, you want R3 zoning? They say no. They go, okay, so we're gonna do commercial. I want to be zoned commercial. And they say, yes, you can have commercial there. And then they put in a PUD for high density, and planning and zoning has to say yes because that is a hole in the comprehensive plan. We weren't collecting impact fees for the fire department in the City of Post Falls. I had to speak up during one of their city council meetings and say, why aren't we collecting impact fees for our fire department? And they go, we're not collecting impact fees for the fire department? And now they're collecting impact fees for the fire department. But unless like citizens actually look into what's going on, assess what's going on, and put in their input, sometimes it's not trapped. So it is nice to get input from people of the city, of the county, and be able to say, hey, look, this is our concerns, and that way we could come up with a way to resolve it. And as he said, it's using fact-based, not, if you leave holes in it, it's, you have to have definitive numbers in the comprehensive plan, because it's, well, it does an undue burden. What does an undue burden mean to you compared to this person? And it leaves it open to where you have to put the yes stamp on everything because you don't have an actual number that says, no, we've hit this number, we're not able to do this anymore, and have it held up in court.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Bela. So I did some research, and property at South 2nd Street, also known as the Resort, has in fact been valued at around $74 million every year for the last 5 years, so I guess 4 years. My assessment has changed every year, so why haven't they at least had a COLA, whereas mine has been bouncing generally pretty high comparatively?
Because
And
you
that
don't own
is,
half the county.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
and that is exactly what I'm saying. So we need to look at the data. We got to find the data. We got to pull. We got to pull costs. We got to get information.
I think the first thing we could do though is at least give them a 1 or 2% bump a year. I mean,
So when I met with my staff a week and a half ago, after I kind of put that video out there, I was in the commercial manager's office, and the commercial appraisers were there. They were talking about the issue, and I said, "Listen, I want you guys to know that I'm not pointing the finger at you. This is the problem. If you go back before that time frame, you go back all the way to 2005, it kind of follows the same pattern."
it does, yeah.
And so he said, "Bela, look at this. This is incredible." That's when he showed me the floor plan of the resort, which is nothing. Then he said, "There's also a field in the CAMA system that's called effective dating." He says, "Look at this." He changes the date because it was built in 1986. And effective dating, just so you know what effective dating is, if you got two homes, you got one built in 1990 and one built in 2025. The value of the 2025 home is probably going to be worth more because it's newer, it's got newer design amenities, it's got different features that they didn't have in 1990. And so, but if they remodeled the 1990 home and make it a lot like the 2025 home, we go into our computer system and let's say they remodeled it in 2023. So we change the effective dating date to 2023 and it bumps the value, right? They went in there and they did that to the resort. No change. Why did that happen? Well, there's problems with depreciation. There's all kinds of problems with the way the computer system was set up and customized. It's almost like it's locked down. And so I don't know the answer. My staff doesn't know the answer, but we're digging into it. We're going to find the answer because that's not right. What state law says is that all values have to go, all of them. And just because we don't visit it once in every 5 years doesn't mean we don't change it. And that's what I'm trying to dig into and get to the bottom of.
Appreciate it.
Try Cabela's too while you're at it.
Yes.
H-E-R-I,
I'm sorry?
the H-E-R-I building.
The human rights, yeah, that's not paying any.
H-R-I,
Yeah,
did I say
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many others.
H-R-E-I.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to call out any by name, but we know what they are and we're going to look at them.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it is a statewide problem. It's happening all over the state that that burden's being shifted onto homeowners away from commercial properties.
Sure has
And
been.
It's,
Yes.
I'm actually happy to see somebody attacking it, and I've actually been pointing out Bela to other assessors going, hey, he's taking this head on if you want to talk to somebody who's taking it head on. So
Let me just
big
say
shift.
this, it's not unpolitical. It just isn't. I mean, I'm out there, but it has to be addressed.
You might be in the press tomorrow.
All right, do we have any other questions before we'll close up then? And I just want to qualify, one thing I said before, we do have all the Republicans coming if we're doing campaigning. If we're just doing factual information, we do not have to bring in all the Republicans. So I just want to make that clear so I don't get in trouble anywhere. With that, do you have closing remarks would you like to make? Do we have time?
Yeah.
Okay, then how about a
till
closing
5.
remark and then we'll close up.
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming out today. I think what's most important is just to understand the challenges facing the county and who you want to be kind of at the helm, if you will. And, you know, we still have immense growth issues. We have immense issues with infrastructure that we're going to have to deal with. We're constantly seeing the cost of labor going up. About 75% of the general government budget is just labor. And one of the things that's important to me is to develop efficiencies so we don't need to keep hiring and expanding the staffing level in the government because it's expensive. It's very expensive. And so just recognizing that, and as well as with the comprehensive plan, if we can get the right comprehensive plan in place and we can work with the legislators to allow the counties to start collecting the impact fees that we need, that is going to create a general relief in essence so that you're not forced to have to pay for the growth that you currently already are forced with. And so I think that it's important that when you look at a county commissioner position, you want someone with good policy understanding and good understanding of math, cash flow, things like that. A business experience, I think, really serves that position well. And so I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Okay, as far as the assessor office is concerned, it's the same issues I've been talking about. Tomorrow is a big day. We go live on Simpatico. Simpatico is the system. Now, keep in mind, there's two separate computer systems. There's the database, which is jointly used by the treasurer and the assessor. The database is Aumentum. That's the system where it applies the tax billing and the tax collection for the treasurer, but for the assessor, it's the property rolls. The other system is the CAMA system, the computer assisted massive appraisal. And that's the one that I was talking a moment ago about the frozen depreciation issues. Both systems have problems. Both systems were customized. Simpatico only applies to the database. Simpatico does not apply to the CAMA system. So we still have plenty of opportunities to work on, plenty of fixes to make. We've got a great team. I've assembled a great team. We're some data savvy, technical people. They know what to do, and we're plugging forward. I hope that I've earned the respect and the vote of confidence for the community, and I ask for your vote on May 19th. Thank you.
I want to thank you guys all for coming out today. I hope I've been able to explain my background. I would love to be your guys' advocate. I've been advocates for patients for quite some time, and I would love to be an advocate for this community. I would love to be able to earn your voice and be able to speak and be able to hear your concerns and be able to express them later on at meetings. I hope my background in financing and owning businesses will help as well. That's kind of a big thing for this, is being able to be in that business world, be able to understand small businesses, be able to understand how the county affects our community, and those decisions that we make today, how they impact our future. I've got kids here, and I want my kids to be able to have this amazing community that we currently have. As we know, cultures can change in communities as they grow, and I hope that by being able to kind of make that impactful thing and see our comprehensive plan and plan for our future, that our future generations to come have this amazing community that we are currently able to enjoy. So thank you.
Again, like everybody, I want to thank everybody for coming. I hope over the for the past hour and a half, I've been able to at least project that I can manage the county's cash effectively, safely, and with the ability that I've learned over the past in my career to make a return, to effectively, lessen the strains that are going to be an issue in 2026 and 2027. I don't think we can get around the facts that things are going to get harder before they get easier. I strongly believe I have the skill set that I can do what I just said and do it effectively. Again, I want to thank everybody, and I'm looking forward to working with all of these fine folks. I mean, we're doing it. We don't have to do it, but we want to do it. Like Julie said, we want to make this community the garden that it is. And please vote on May 19th.